IPMNation.com.
IPM Nation presents Angry Drunk Tales.
Be angry. Me write angry emails.
Episode 1.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
We Hardly Knew Ye. Hello everyone, welcome to the debut episode of Angry Drunk Tales. I'm Matt Connerton, and with me is Jen Coffey.
Hello.
From the Uptown Auto Repair Studio in Manchester, New Hampshire, here on IPM Nation. And this is, by far, this will be the most certainly unique show that I've ever been involved in thus far. I think we both could say that.
Yes, I absolutely agree. There is definitely a lot of uniqueness to this.
Yes.
Things in life that people would say, you just can't make that kind of shit up.
Well, let's explain what this is. And if this sounds not that interesting initially, stick with me here for a minute, and I'll explain why this is going to be a very fun show. We're really kind of pulling back the curtain here. Back in January, Jen and I moved in. We were looking for a new living situation. We moved in with a gentleman named
Napoleon Bonaparte,
who was a free stater. And
Napoleon Bonaparte
had at the time already one roommate,
psychopath,
the namesake for our show. And so we moved into this apartment with
Napoleon Bonaparte
and
psychopath.
And what transpired was a pretty, well, let's say this. We moved in January, and we're not living there anymore. We just recently got out of there. It turned out to be kind of a hellacious living situation in terms of
Napoleon Bonaparte
ended up disappearing. Well, not disappearing. We know where he is. He moved away. We ended up getting stuck there with
psychopath.
And that's why the show is called the Angry Drunk Tales. But this is where it gets interesting, because you might be thinking, well, so what? Lots of people have shitty roommate stories. What's so special about this that you would want to make a show about it? And I'll tell you why. The emails. Our roommate story.
Many emails.
Yes. Our roommate story is it's completely unique because
psychopath
loves to send his roommates emails. He loves to send long, rambling, seemingly unhinged, unglued, whatever, emails that go on and on and on. And if you're not on the receiving end of one of these emails, it's a lot of fun to read or to have it read to you. And I'll explain that in a moment. Or if you're in a situation where we are, where we used to have to deal with receiving these emails and all of the stress and anxiety produced by that, but now that we're no longer living with
psychopath,
we also can laugh
yes.
and have some fun with these emails.
Absolutely. Psychopath. I do want to say one thing, though. I'm not positive if
Napoleon Bonaparte
was a free stater or not.
Okay.
I think he might have been. That one I'm not positive on.
Okay. And we have a few emails from
Napoleon Bonaparte.
But
Napoleon Bonaparte.
These were very short, but in a couple of instances, also incredibly douchey. But the main focus is
psychopath. This is definitely an issue here.
Yes. Although
psychopath
didn't help.
That's one way of putting it.
I think
psychopath
might have brought out the douche in
Napoleon Bonaparte.
Very much so in hindsight, but so
psychopath
fancies himself an author. Apparently, he's written a couple of books, but
that have never been published.
Yes.
But only he has seen them.
But he loves writing extremely long emails, and if he is angry with you, these emails are filled with hate and vitriol And many of the emails that we received, particularly at the end, could have been summed up in one simple sentence. I hate you and I want you to leave. But
psychopath
doesn't do anything half-assed. He's not going to write a simple one-sentence email expressing that one very basic thought. Oh, no, he's going to write paragraph after paragraph of just insane, drunken rambling. And
with very interesting content that one of a normal mind would never even perceive.
Yes.
Of thinking, never mind sending to someone.
These emails are so interesting and bizarre that the initial thought was, I said to Jen, we could take all these emails, and let me tell you, I have not counted them. We have probably at least, no exaggeration here at all, more than 100 emails.
At least.
Actually, probably a couple of hundred total. But in terms of these long, rambling, hateful, angry emails, we have at least 100 of them.
And unusual.
Yes.
And wow, how did you even think of that?
Yes, he's a special one.
psychopath
Very special. Very, very special.
But I said to Jen, we have enough material. We could actually make a book out of this.
And I have actually published a book very successfully and actually won an award. I won the Blade Magazine Editors Award for my work in my book.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah,
sold
you're a published author, yes.
Yeah, I sold hundreds of copies, and I'm rather proud of that.
Yes. But we have so many emails, and they're so long that, I mean, we have enough to put them in a book, which we will eventually do, actually. But then I also thought we could make a show with these emails, and kind of the plan, I mean, this is the debut episode, so we're giving you the backstory, and we'll see if we have time, maybe we'll get in an email or two, but we want to give you kind of the backstory. And listen, I mean this sincerely when I tell you this, if this sounds even the slightest bit interesting to you, stick with us, because this show, as it progresses and as we get further and further into the story, and when I say this show, I don't mean this episode, I mean the show, because we're going to, the long-term plan is, and again, we're starting out kind of giving you the backstory and an overview, but we're going to do an email per episode. So a typical episode of Angry Drunk Tales is we'll kind of give you the backstory. What was happening at this point? What were our interactions like with
psychopath
at this point in the story? What was going on? And then we will present to you a dramatic reading of
psychopaths.
Multi-paragraph, in some cases multi-page, screed, filled with anger, vitriol, hate, smugness, narcissism, sociopathy. What else could we throw in there? Oh, yeah. Very, very paranoid, extremely paranoid. And drunkenness, of course.
Imaginary.
Yep, he imagined. I mean, that'll show up later in the story, but he imagines conversations that didn't happen.
A fair warning that there may be the inclusion of some colorful language.
Oh, certainly.
And there may also be, well, actually, there is in every single email no grammatical following whatsoever. So if you are somebody that is a writer or an editor, you're not going to like the grammar at all. But it makes it all the more interesting to listen to. And I'm telling you, you're going to want to hear it.
Let's give here, I'm going to give a preview for anyone who may have doubts and might be thinking, this doesn't sound that interesting. There was an email, so I'm just going to give a little preview here. Just give you a taste of what's in store, because we're gonna do this. We're gonna do 5 episodes a week. The show's going to run at midnight, Monday through Friday. Well,
very appropriate hour.
If it's at midnight, I guess technically it's Tuesday through Saturday, but.
Now you're being too technical. For some parts of the world, it would still be
that's true.
The country, it would
Eastern
still
time,
be Monday through Friday.
Yes,
so,
because it's Eastern time. We're in Manchester, New Hampshire, but
and that was a little disjointed
But here's just a preview of one of the things that showed up in these emails.
Psychopath.
Was having a bit of a conflict with
Napoleon Bonaparte.
because
Napoleon Bonaparte.
was not cooperating in transferring the lease over to
Psychopath.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
was being difficult. Not that
Psychopath.
was making things any better.
Psychopath.
Sent a series, a seemingly endless series of, I mean, that'll probably be several weeks worth of shows right there. A series of emails to
Napoleon Bonaparte.
threatening him and trying to get him to sign over the lease to.
Psychopath.
And in one of these emails,
Psychopath.
threatened several times to have several gay African-American gentlemen over to the apartment to have an orgy, a gay black orgy on
Napoleon Bonaparte.
his bed, which was still in the apartment at this point, even though
Napoleon Bonaparte.
was in the process of moving away, and very painted a very shall we say vivid mental image within the context of the email of an orgy of gay black gentlemen ejaculating all over
Napoleon Bonaparte.
his bed.
Yes.
This is just one example of what you're in for.
Small taste.
Yes, you must stick around for the entire series. It is a commitment. Like I said, we have over 100 emails. We'll probably have easily 100 episodes of this show. We'll broadcast some weeknights at midnight, and then we'll post the podcast so you can listen to it at your leisure.
And of course, they'll be downloadable.
Yes. So this is a long-term commitment, but you will not be sorry. It is a frightening journey into the mind of
Psychopath.
but it is a roommate experience that I would challenge anyone to match in terms of just the sheer bizarreness and the literary flair of
Psychopath.
Absolutely.
And for anyone who's wondering too, how can we do this? Are we concerned about getting in trouble legally for slander or libel or anything like that? Absolutely not, because we're going to use
Psychopath.
own emails. That's really all it is.
Which, in most cases, were sent to more than one person.
Yes.
Very rarely were they sent to only one person.
Exactly.
And that was only towards the end when there were less people. But
Yes.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yes. We're just going to present to you
Psychopath.
his own words. I don't even know, honestly, because it's inevitable that
Psychopath.
himself will find out about this show. I don't know if he'll
I
be
hope
upset. He might be happy. He's narcissistic enough. He might be like, wow, they're going to make me famous. And when the world hears my side of things, everyone will take my side and realize I was right.
Yes, because he is never wrong in any instance, ever.
Yes.
Ever, 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 ever.
So to give a little bit more backstory, we moved in with
Napoleon Bonaparte.
in January. And
Napoleon Bonaparte.
Psychopath.
it was
Napoleon Bonaparte.
his apartment. The lease was in
Napoleon Bonaparte.
his name. Very, very important detail. So
Psychopath.
was there as one of
Napoleon Bonaparte.
his roommates, and we were coming in also to be
Napoleon Bonaparte.
his roommates. But we never saw much of
Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte.
was, and as we understood this moving in, very busy guy, traveling a lot,
Right.
very rarely home. In fact, I used to joke when I would encounter
Napoleon Bonaparte.
in the kitchen or whatever that, for a moment I was frightened. I thought there was an intruder in the home because I
That's
would
true.
so rarely see.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
It's true.
And I will say that
And I referred to his bedroom as an oversized storage room.
Yes.
I did actually say, but I said that directly to him actually. So
Yes.
that wasn't any
no,
secret.
of course not. And at the time we got along with
Napoleon Bonaparte.
very well. Of course, we hardly ever saw him. And I always enjoyed my interactions with him, brief and sparse as they were. But there was always this kind of thing hanging over us, too, where we wondered, is he going to move out? Because, he didn't say anything about him leaving when we moved in, so we assumed that we would be long-term roommates. But obviously, if he does one day decide to move out, then that's going to complicate things. That's going to, then we're going to be in a position of having to make some decisions. And it was kind of always sort of hanging over our heads as, okay, he hasn't said anything, but he's never here. And he had a place, we knew that he had a place in Albany, New York, because he had a business there.
Right.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
Joe and Doe.
Right. And that was really his primary resident that everything was at.
So we used to wonder, why does he even keep this apartment? It's bizarre. I remember
Psychopath.
would talk about it. Yeah, I think he's going to move out. And then it finally happened, and it was in, and this is where the trouble started. Oh, and I should say, too, up to this point, well, and really beyond this point, we got along very well with
Psychopath.
Now,
Psychopath.
to explain how we viewed him at this point and going forward from this point for a while,
Psychopath.
very, very... this side of
Psychopath.
very, very sweet guy, kind of a big teddy bear, very helpful. Wanted to make sure, for example, he was very concerned that we had cable in our room so that we could watch TV, even though we didn't really care that much, but he wanted to make sure that we were able to watch movies and whatnot. And you know, he was just helpful with things like that. He seemed to be very concerned about making sure that we were happy there. But he was almost too friendly in some ways because, you know, he would knock on our door late at night. Granted, only if he saw the light on, but there were many instances where you were trying to sleep, and I was up late working, and my working is being interrupted by
Psychopath.
knocking on the door because he wants to tell me about that night's episode of Walking Dead or whatever, which I personally couldn't give a shit about.
Or some other bull crap.
Right, but I would humor him. And the reason I can say, I think we were both incredibly patient with
Psychopath.
because
There were many times where I was woken.
oh yeah, and there were many times when I was frustrated because I was trying to get my work done.
Yeah, and that would frustrate me because your answer to that was to leave.
Sometimes I would leave.
I would. It's the only way to get him to stop.
Right.
You'd have to go. Well, I got to run to 7-Eleven or something.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
You would leave,
and then I'd leave and do some work on my phone, sitting in the Jeep. But the thing is, we were patient with him because, you know, I just felt like I don't want to say anything because I don't want him to take it the wrong way. I don't want to hurt his feelings. He's clearly a very lonely person. He means well. He obviously likes us very much. That's why he wants to talk to us. That's why he wants to, you know, be so friendly, and he just kind of doesn't understand why you shouldn't knock on somebody's door at 2 a.m, even if the light is on. But you know, I was always afraid to say anything because I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I was afraid I would hurt his feelings.
But he had a downside that went with that.
Right. But we're very nice people, regardless of what
Psychopath.
thinks. You and I are very nice, patient people. And good luck to him, by the way, with new future roommates finding people as patient with that stuff as we were. So I would get frustrated, but I was like, yeah, but he means well, and he's a good guy, and he's just trying to be friendly, and I don't want any drama. And that's part of what made this whole situation a nightmare, too, because you've heard me say it 1,000 times. I can go out into the world every day, all day, and fight whatever battles I need to fight, but I want home to be home.
Exactly.
I want home to be drama-free. And that was part of why I would never say anything.
You've heard me say that all the time.
Of course, yeah. And that was part of why I wouldn't say anything either. I would just kind of roll with it and just be patient with it and whatnot.
Home is supposed to be peaceful and safe and warm and inviting. And
so, yeah, it was a little frustrating at times. He was a little overbearing and whatnot, but at least he was nice.
Well, that had to do with
and he seemed to mean well. You know,
that had to do with how much.
Oh, how much he'd been drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether it was a 12-pack or a case and a 12-pack or...
Yeah. Bit of a drinker.
Every single day. Maybe once a week or something on occasion he would have a day that he didn't.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, you could walk by his room when he would leave the door open and see all the bottles on his desk.
Minimum of a 12-pack.
Oh, yeah.
Minimum.
Yeah, he's a drinker. So,
I wonder if it was mush brain. Some of it.
I don't know.
Killing all those brain cells.
But, so, you know, but we got along really well with
Psychopath.
We liked it.
Psychopath.
Again, I'd get a little frustrated with him. I think we both would, but we rolled with it because we're nice people, and it was like, he's a nice guy, and, this is cool. We get along really well. And then,
Napoleon Bonaparte.
and of course we got along with
Napoleon Bonaparte.
great too on the rare occasions we would see him. And then this is where the story truly begins. So the first thing to happen is,
Napoleon Bonaparte
informs us, or actually I don't think he even informed us. You saw something on Facebook first, right?
Napoleon Bonaparte.
Posted something on Facebook that
Psychopath.
took an offense to and saw as a racist comment, which then proceeded to become one of those drama-filled Facebook fights between
Psychopath.
and
Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yeah.
have no idea of any of this
Well,
until I see something on Facebook and then suddenly get a message from
Napoleon Bonaparte.
kicking everybody out and having no idea why.
well, you're skipping ahead, I think, because he didn't kick everybody out. He made the decision to move out. He didn't kick us out initially.
I thought initially he was trying to kick everybody out and then he moved. No, you're right.
No.
Initially he was just going to move out.
He was going to move out, and I guess in his mind, let the chips fall where they may. Whatever the rest of you do is up to you.
Right.
Which
But it was immediate that at that point we then became the enemies to,
Napoleon Bonaparte.
though we were not involved in this issue because I guess we were under the same roof as
Psychopath.
and
Psychopath.
insulted him on Facebook.
well, but you also did send
Napoleon Bonaparte.
an angry text message because you had been asking,
Napoleon Bonaparte.
"Are you going to move out? Are you going to move out?" And
Napoleon Bonaparte.
kept saying no. So when
Well,
you
that's
found out,
skipping ahead because that was after I found out he said he was going to move out
but
or he
you,
was thinking about it.
but when you found out.
Oh, the Colorado.
When you found out, right?
Yes.
When you found out he
When
decided
Alex
to leave,
was posting that he was not going to reopen his restaurant in Jersey, that he
Right.
was going to go to Colorado, and it's like, wait a minute, if you're going to go to Colorado, what does that mean about our apartment?
right? And that's
And
when
that's
you
where it
sent,
started.
and you sent him an angry text or a couple of angry texts about you should have been honest with me.
Exactly.
And then he responded with something like, "The best thing you could do right now is leave me alone." So that really, I think, is where, if that particular exchange hadn't happened, see, I don't know if your becoming at odds with
Napoleon Bonaparte.
really had anything to do with the stuff with.
Psychopath.
No, because
I think it had more to do with that exchange.
No, it was because
Initially, anyway.
Initially, but it escalated exponentially after the fight on Facebook. Suddenly,
Yeah.
it was us and there was an us and them mentality going on that was way beyond anything that had occurred between
Napoleon Bonaparte.
and I.
Right. So at this point, so the next thing that basically happens is, so we talk to,
Psychopath.
and
Psychopath.
this is a very important detail,
Psychopath.
volunteered to take over the lease. We said, we don't feel like either of us are in a position to do it. We'd rather, we didn't have a lease moving in there. The lease was,
Napoleon Bonaparte.
we
And
both,
he already had one of the utilities in his name, which
Right,
already
the internet.
gave him residency status.
right. And that's an important detail much later in the story, actually. But that is an important detail also, that the internet was in
Psychopath.
his name,
Yes.
all the cable. Because when we moved into that apartment, the deal was we paid a flat rate for rent, utilities included, which included internet, which was
Psychopath.
because
Psychopath.
he's a computer programmer and he's obsessed with television. He even sleeps with the television on. So with those two things combined, cable and internet are extremely important to him, and he was providing that for everyone. And
Correct.
that was part of the deal.
Right. And he made it clear that he was the one that was providing that end of the deal
Yes.
when we were moving in.
Exactly. So we say, well, we don't feel like we're in a position to take the lease. We'd almost rather move and find another situation where we don't need to do that. And then
Psychopath.
said, I'll take over the lease. It was really important to him to keep us all together. And he didn't really say it at that point. He didn't come right out and say it. But my perception was he didn't want to lose us. It was obvious that he'd become attached to us. I mean, obviously, if you're going to knock on somebody's door at 2 a.m., to initiate a conversation with them, you must like them.
He was like a big giant teddy bear, and
exactly.
He was, we would wash each other's dishes.
Oh yeah.
I would cook a meal.
We got along
and go
great.
Knock on his door and said, "Hey, you hungry? Do you want some spaghetti or something like that?"
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty common.
Just the nicest guy.
Yeah, it was actually a pretty decent living arrangement.
It was absolutely. So we have one of the emails we have here. This is where we'll start with this part, is a screenshot. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to skip ahead. So
Psychopath.
Oh, wow. I'm sorry. I'm skipping way ahead. Okay. So what happens then is, well, wait, was this interaction that
Napoleon Bonaparte
had with that he screenshotted to us, was that before or after the big argument between
Psychopath.
Napoleon Bonaparte?
That was before.
It was before. You're right. Okay,
that
good.
was before.
Okay.
Napoleon Bonaparte
And I were getting along just fine, and he's like, "Jen, I'm taking care of everything. Don't worry." And then he sent a screenshot.
A screenshot of, and this is what it is. It is him notifying the landlord of the plan, because he and
Psychopath.
had spoken at this point, I think on the phone, and
Psychopath.
said, I'd like to take over the lease. I'll put everything in my name. So,
Napoleon Bonaparte
to reassure you that everything was cool and
Yep.
that knew what was up, sent
Yep.
a text, and this is the screenshot that
Napoleon Bonaparte
sent you.
Which shows, his full name and number and stuff.
Absolutely.
But we're not going to give that
verifiable.
out on air.
Well, of course not. But,
Napoleon Bonaparte
says, I'll get some good tenants for you. Tell me when they're out, and I take care of it and send you good people, meaning to replace himself. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so that was the initial text. Actually, I think was saying, I'm leaving, and he was assuming we were going to leave too, because that's why he's saying, I can take care of it and send you good people. And then said, when they're out, I let you know. And then
Napoleon Bonaparte
says, my roommate is taking over the apartment. He can sign a lease as well. Said, okay.
Napoleon Bonaparte
Said, what does he owe? First month and security deposit, right? And said, yes. So the wheels were in motion. This is what was going to happen.
Psychopath.
Was going to take over the lease.
Yep, and
Napoleon Bonaparte
he even made a comment in the email when he sent me the screenshot saying, "See, Jen, I have everything under control. Nothing for you to worry about."
Right. So meanwhile, so this was in April.
So, and then everything was fine.
Yeah, yes.
So we thought.
So just to clarify the timeline, this was in April. The lease, we thought, because
Napoleon Bonaparte
thought that his lease was up June 1st. But without telling us, he went ahead and invited Angela, who became our new roommate, to move in on May 1st, even though
Napoleon Bonaparte
wasn't out yet. And I think, because we actually went through the trouble of placing Craigslist ads and all this, and then we find out Angela's getting dumped on us, which,
Well, no,
and Angela's wonderful, don't get me wrong, but at the time it was like,
really
wait a minute.
weird way that it happened.
Yeah. Because there was no communication. It was just like...
No, it was suddenly I got a message from this girl, Angela, who I didn't know and wasn't friends with, asking me when she could start moving her things in.
Right.
And I didn't know what she was talking about or where she was moving her things into because all the rooms were full.
Right. And
Napoleon Bonaparte
told her May 1st. So it was actually a couple days before May 1st.
Psychopath.
And this was...
Psychopath.
This was
Psychopath.
his first mistake, where something happened that I didn't agree with. But
Psychopath.
decided, okay, Angela's moving in,
Napoleon Bonaparte.
is never here, Andy's leaving anyway,
Psychopath.
began removing some things from
Napoleon Bonaparte.
his room, put them in one of the living rooms, because the apartment was pretty big, basically
Well,
had two
no,
living rooms.
wait a minute. Now you're getting ahead of yourself.
Okay.
First, he boxed everything up, and he piled it off in the side of the corner of
Napoleon Bonaparte.
this room
Right.
to make a space for Angela to be.
Right.
The living room changeover happens later,
Okay. But, so...
after the visitation.
So seemingly his heart was in the right place. He was very concerned about making room for Angela, and in
Psychopath.
his defense, it certainly was not his fault that
Napoleon Bonaparte.
told Angela May 1st when
Napoleon Bonaparte.
didn't even think his lease was up till
and
June
this,
1st.
this Angela had given up where she was, so this was putting her in a place where she would be homeless. So
Yeah.
rather than not letting that happen, I actually had spoken to...
Psychopath.
We had Angela come over, meet us, get to talk to her, and then say, okay, we're okay with her moving in.
Right. So he goes and does that, and then, so I'm in the shower one day, and I hear yelling. And I turn the water off, and I realize, oh,
Napoleon Bonaparte.
is home, and he and
Psychopath.
are yelling.
I am in the bedroom with the door closed,
Yeah.
not in any way, shape, or form involved in any of this.
Right.
Nor did I want to be.
So this was the first big conflict.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
Is freaking out at
Psychopath.
for taking it upon himself to move his stuff. And almost immediately, the whole thing spirals out of control. I remember hearing
Psychopath.
telling
Napoleon Bonaparte.
he was going to get a restraining order against him, and then
Napoleon Bonaparte.
just saying, well, I'm kicking everybody out, and Angela can't move in after all, and
And then
Napoleon Bonaparte.
yelled for me
yeah,
to immediately come out there. And I come out there, and he hands me a piece of paper telling me I'm evicted. Just me.
yeah,
Not you, just me.
Yeah.
Incidentally, we are partners. We do share the same bedroom.
right. So that was that was this whole argument between them, and we're sitting there like, okay, so
Psychopath.
is totally blowing this because
Well, he's doing things like, come on, hit me. Go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead,
yeah,
hit
yeah,
me.
yeah.
He's trying to instigate a violent action.
yeah, he's just totally blowing it. So then eventually I go out there, and I have a pretty calming presence. I'm pretty good in these situations, and I just try to calm everybody down. I mean, I think they were already in the process of calming down, but I was just kind of like, look, guys, we all want the same thing here. We want to make this transition. And, and meanwhile, in the midst of all this,
Napoleon Bonaparte.
is pulling out his lease and realizing it actually says July 1st, that it's up, not June 1st, thus further complicating things. But everything was settled down, and it was like, okay, we're back on track, and
Psychopath.
was going to talk to the landlord, and actually they were going to talk to the landlord together, but then
Napoleon Bonaparte.
ended up not sticking around. He had to go back to Denver. But that was the first big conflict. So at that point, it was like, when everything settled down, it was like, okay, I think everything's back on track. But I remember saying to you, I was like,
Psychopath.
handled that really, really poorly.
Well, yeah, because he was really trying to instigate violence.
Right.
He was really trying to goad
Napoleon Bonaparte.
into having a violent reaction so he would have an excuse to involve the police and, see
Napoleon Bonaparte.
in handcuffs. I truly believe that was his intent
Yeah.
because of the language choices that he was making in his physical body reactions were everything in the world to egg
Napoleon Bonaparte.
into hitting him.
Yeah. This is here's an exchange. So this is, we'll get into some actual emails now. Now these initial emails are very short because the really good stuff is coming. Don't worry. But initially, so
Psychopath.
Sends, this is in the aftermath of all that,
Psychopath.
sends this to both of us. Going down to talk to the landlord when he gets home. Jen, I am respectfully asking you to please not send anything to
Napoleon Bonaparte.
and I'm just reading this straight. I'm not doing a dramatic reading for this. We'll save that. But
They are to come.
Oh, yes. Trying to keep everything as we discussed over a week ago. The best way to do that, this is
Psychopath.
being very reasonable, by the way, something we didn't see a lot of. The best way to do that is to not ask
Napoleon Bonaparte.
anything about moving his stuff, as I'd first agreed that he could keep his stuff here until June 1st. That becomes important later. He, of course, had said he would be moving before then, but it is his prerogative to keep his things here until, if need be, as it is, I think he is planning on moving his stuff like May 18. I am going to take his bed apart tonight so Angela can set up her air mattress until then. After he has his stuff out, you and Angela can swap rooms, and I will be sure she knows that so she doesn't get too comfortable in there until then. And then you responded, I am avoiding him. It's in your hands. I never contacted him until Angela and you asked me to. Please let me know when he is gone. I don't feel safe about coming back. Okay, so this was that same day that
Napoleon Bonaparte.
was there and the conflict happened. And then
Psychopath.
replied, he left. And then you said, also my phone is off, so contact Matt, because you were using my phone to type this. I moved and tried to stay hidden from his type. Just add alcohol, you get what you got. That is interesting, because that was you. You were saying that about
Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yes.
and
It's very telling.
It's because
That'll show up also in future.
Yes,
episodes
that will
of
show
the-
up. That will show up later in relation to
Psychopath.
In future chronicles.
But this is you saying that to
Psychopath.
about.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
So that's interesting. That becomes quite a theme in this story. So then
Psychopath.
replies, going to talk to Tom in the morning, seeing as he is working tonight. And then I always thought this was interesting. So then
Psychopath.
starts making all these kind of wild assumptions about
Napoleon Bonaparte.
that I really didn't see any evidence of. Next thing
Psychopath.
says is, I suspect drug use even more now, actually, because at the end of the day, we went round and round and came back to where we were a week ago. Sorry, I'm just...
Yeah, at that point he brought in his suspicion that
Napoleon Bonaparte.
his behaviorism was due to drug abuse.
Right. Then in a later email, he says, been thinking about it and remember mentioning it
Napoleon Bonaparte.
a couple of times about hearing something scurrying upstairs in the ceiling. Okay, that was about a mouse or something.
That's not too much fun. We have way better stuff than that.
Yeah, so this thread, that's kind of it for that thread of emails. So at that point, we seem to be
we seem to be back
on
to a
track.
calmer level, but it
Yes.
was still stressful because nobody really knew what was going to happen next, and basically Angela's got half a room to stay in because all
Napoleon Bonaparte.
the stuff is in there.
Oh, because things were so friendly at this point between us and
Psychopath.
still at this point that
We actually had face-to-face conversations.
yeah.
You know, step in the kitchen and just stand and talk around or something like that, you know.
This is where the real show begins, everybody. We're going to have our first dramatic reading. Oh, because, and I don't have these emails, but there was a series of about kicking us all out.
Right, that was after they had their...
Right.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
Changed his mind. After everything seemed to be settled, all of a sudden
Napoleon Bonaparte.
gets all Napoleon on everybody and decides, oh, I'm just going to kick you all out because I'm mad at
Psychopath.
basically. So I'm just going to evict you all, which he couldn't do. Retaliatory evictions are illegal, and what would be the point? He was moving out anyway. He was just being a dick.
Right.
This was when
Napoleon Bonaparte.
was full-on douche. But this is the first really aggressive email to
Napoleon Bonaparte.
our first dramatic reading in the
Psychopath.
Chronicles. Here we go. And again, remember,
Psychopath.
likes to, this is only the beginning. Like, this is nothing compared to some of the emails that are going to show up later. This is tame. But this is the beginning. This is
Psychopath.
responding to
Napoleon Bonaparte.
threatening to kick us all out and not honor the agreement for
Psychopath.
to take over the lease. That your difficulty, he just kind of starts the sentence without even starting the sentence. By the way, a couple things to keep in mind too. If it sounds like as I'm reading these there's poor grammar, that's because there's poor grammar. And also prepare to hear phrases like at the end of the day and by the way excessively. He says things like that a lot. And this is dated May 3rd, 2015. From
Psychopath.
to
Napoleon Bonaparte.
that your difficulty is not fucking me over at all, right? I have other places I can move. The only people you would be fucking over is Matt, Jen, and Angela, and yourself, as you would be paying $1,000 for an apartment you won't even be living in for the final month. In fact, you could right now ask for the security deposit back and let me take it over right away and come get your stuff within the next few weeks. But you are making things difficult. By the way, I enjoy how it was simply assumed that that I would even want to take over the lease. No one even asked me if I wanted to take over the lease. I was simply just assumed. I have been willing to take it over, but I am not willing to fight for it. So if you really want to fuck over everyone but me, then make things difficult. Having the electricity turned to my name was intended to save you money, not to fuck you over. Asking you to make arrangements to have the gas turned over was also meant to benefit you. Then you said you would be moving on Monday, so I tried to set it up so you could get your security deposit back quicker, not to screw you over. And to make transition simpler for Angela as well. You are basically making assumptions that everything is being done despite you. And it has not been so. Well, not until I saw some rather racist posts on your Facebook page. The reason why I keep asking people not to friend me on there, by the way. Because if they have anything racist, homophobic, or such on their page, then I am going to get rather pissed off at them. After what I read there, I was very upset. Because to that point, and until you assumed that things were being done to spite you, I had thought very highly of you. I was willing to take over the lease, but not if it turns into a fight. In addition, taking over the lease to me is not even necessarily the best thing for me, as it limits in ongoing job searches. That is, for quite some time I've been trying to find a job in Boston. With a lease here, I am stuck here. But I was willing to take over for the sake of everyone involved. So if you think you are hurting me somehow, you should think again. We need a resolution of this right away. None of us can go on living daily at your whims. If this problem persists past Tuesday, and Housing Authority, when they call, do not provide adequate advice as to what to do, then I am going to say that come Tuesday, you will be stuck for the rent and utilities. It's as simple as that. I refuse to fight over something that is not a benefit to me. One more thing. It's your responsibility to pay rent. We did for May, but Housing Authority and legal assistance have both already said that if you pursue this, then we can get May's rent back from as you are supposed to be the one to pay him. That is, we could leave you on the hook for May and June's rent and still hang up evictions proceedings for another 3 months. Have you really thought this all out? If you insist on scaring Jen and Angela over and over, then I think I might choose to clean under your TV. And the only way to do that thoroughly is to move it down to the street while I am doing so. Have you really thought this out? I have offered you an easy way out of obligations that you had tired of and offered to store your stuff for you. It was your paranoid mind that made more of that. You said you wanted to move out last week. You could have done that. And then, when you reneged, I offered to store your stuff. You can choose to walk away with no drama? Or you can choose to find yourself in trouble with Manchester Housing Authority and trying to go through eviction. By the way, it's not up to you to evict, as subletting in Manchester is illegal. And you will have to come back to go through court proceedings and all of that. And if chooses to evict, then he has to evict even you. Why not just do yourself a favor of releasing the lease so that can re-rent? That completely lets you off the hook. You could get your security deposit back as soon as Tom sends it to you, and you would have no worries over cleaning the place, as it quite all right for Tom to withhold part of your security for cleaning the place and any repairs necessary when the four of us move out as well. Remember, you are responsible for those repairs, as it was going to comp me a little bit for repairing this place. Seems to me you really have not thought this whole thing out very well. No one here wants any of your stuff. Your TV has too many dead pixels to even make it worthwhile for even the worst pawn shop, as in fact worthless with all its dead pixels. There is nothing here that you own that any of us have any interest in. It's mostly junk. In fact, we had discussed several times the fact that we might have to remove it ourselves if you fail to take, say, your shitty dumpster diving couch. We all want you to take all of your shit, and we don't have to remove it. Then there is the fact that you also assumed I would help you move your stuff out. Seriously? You really have no idea. I had already felt how I had already felt about you when you repeatedly fucked over my employer and lied to him on an almost daily basis about meeting with him. You could have simply said no to him, but instead you lied to him repeatedly for 6 weeks, and me, as the person who vouched for you, ends up looking like shit because of it. My disdain for you started when you made me look like shit with my boss. I vouched for you personally. You could have said at any step you weren't interested, yet you left people hanging for 6 weeks and made me look like shit for suggesting you. So that was actually a few emails, but those emails together.
That is a simple, very light introduction into the mind of
Psychopath.
Yes, that was a few emails put together, but very, very soon, in fact, next episode, he gets into this thing where he starts writing long, like there's an email I'm looking at, it is 5 paragraphs long, and we'll probably have to devote the entire episode to that.
because it's very colorful.
It just gets really, really crazy. It gets really strange.
And then they get stranger and stranger, and yet stranger still.
Oh, yeah.
There is so much more to come. This is simply a small taste of what
Psychopath.
Chronicles have in store for you.
Psychopath.
Chronicles.
True.
Psychopath.
It sounds more dignified.
Sounds more like a serial something.
Well, it is. You mean a serial like a multi-parter? Well,
Well,
that
like
is what this is.
Serial, like a serial killer or a serial peeping Tom.
Oh, I thought you meant a serial like this is a serial...
Serial sicko.
Because this is a serial show.
Psycho, a serial fill in the blank.
Yeah, it only gets better. So again, if this is even the slightest bit interesting to you with his emails, yeah, it's going to get a whole lot more interesting. So we hope you'll be back tomorrow for episode 2 of Angry Drunk Tales, where we really descend into madness.
Absolutely, and it's only the beginning. And don't forget, they will be available on demand, and you can play them straight from IPMNation.com, or you can download them at your leisure, or you can sign up for the RSS feed.
And by the way, if you are someone with roommates, ask yourself this question. Do they like to send you emails? Good night.
Good night.
Hi, this is Wooly, and Wooly used to be my roommate, but now he's gone. And do you know why? Because I was a bad roommate. I know, me. I can get cranky too, I'm human. And now Wooly's gone, and I'll never get to tell him I'm sorry. Guys, if you have a roommate, listen up and listen good. Do not let what happened between me and Woldy happen to you. Having a roommate is hard. I know, there's conflict and you're going to have to make sacrifices.
Andy, guess how far I ran, man. Guess how far I ran, man. I ran miles, man. Guess how far? Andy.
One thing you can try is to talk things out, communicate, sit down with your roommate, just hammer things out.
Andy, man, I just talk to that girl, man. I hate you.
And if that doesn't work, you could always just run him over with your car, like I did.
Oh, there he is.
You've ruined my life for the last time!
IPMNation.com